Give us your thoughts on the year ahead in media and advertising. What are you expecting to see in 2022?
I remain extremely bullish, if not a raging bull, certainly close to one. I mean, it'll be the same but different, if that's not a contradictory answer, in the sense that GDP growth this year will be about 4 to 5% versus 5 to 6%, despite Omicron. And Omicron will probably push some of the growth from Q1 into Q2 and 3 and 4, though we've made a very fast start from what I can hear, certainly faster than last year. Digital will again dominate, just like it did in 2021 and indeed in 2020. So in 2020, we were up like for like about 20%, remembering we're purely digital. Last year, we were up close to 50%. This year, we start like we started last year at 25%. We upped our guidance last year to 30, 35 and 40 and went well beyond that in the end last year. But this year, we'll see what happens. But I remain pretty bullish. The traditional part of the industry will continue to be under pressure, probably more pressure than last year, where there was a bounce back because of the fiscal and monetary stimulus. And I think the two engines that drive our digital progress, the first being GDP growth and then the second being digital transformation, one will overtake the other as we go through 2022. So when we get into the second half of 2022 and the inflation fears, interest rate rises start to bite from a growth point of view, which they will do in a full year in 2023, and we go back to where we were sort of pre-COVID in terms of GDP growth around 2 to 3%, the digital transformation engine, the desire to grow or to change the structure because of a lack of general economic growth, will reassert itself and growth will become even more important. So a strong 2022, the difference will be that digital transformation will become the major driving force or the driving force as opposed to the extra force from GDP growth.
How much scope do you see for shift in the digital space? Do you think new players like TikTok or Snap or even Amazon will start to gain share in the digital ad market from Facebook and Google?
They will continue to gain share. Just reading an article just this second that came out on it. But look, Google and Facebook in the West in particular, although even in China, the outbound Google, Facebook, Amazon have very strong outbound Chinese businesses. But those three platforms will continue to dominate in the West. But you'll see the continued rise of Snap and Pinterest and Twitter, and the article I was reading referred to Microsoft having ad revenues last year of around 19 billion. Apple has developed its own ad revenues recently. TikTok, if you went back to 20, was around about 32 billion, and obviously in 21 has done much better, and we're seeing a huge surge into TikTok as well as we go into 2022. So the other platforms will continue to grow. I mean, Amazon, I think the figures for 21, Google will be around about 215 billion in terms of total ad revenues, Facebook about 115, and Amazon around 35. My own view is that Amazon will eventually get to 100 billion, but Google and Facebook will continue to dominate in terms of scale, particularly in the West. Alibaba and Tencent will continue to dominate in the East, obviously, particularly in China. But we're seeing the rise of TikTok. Snap will be around about 5 billion. So relatively small. Same for Twitter, relatively smaller, but growing rapidly and probably growing faster than the bigger platforms. But the big boys, big girls, or the big six, including TikTok in that, or ByteDance in those six, will continue to dominate.
So TV businesses are obviously in the middle of their own transformation. There's the shift to streaming, there's diversification across different platforms, there's data enablement, there's addressability. What's your take on this transformation? Are the big TV businesses moving quickly enough to embrace digital?
Well, you never do. I mean, if one looks back, you always undercook or underdo what you should be doing. You always underestimate the pace of digital change or technological change, and so the free-to-air networks basically will probably be kicking themselves, like I guess the big advertising groups kicking themselves. I certainly would have been kicking myself for not moving fast enough. You always underestimate the speed of change and the velocity of it. So the traditional TV companies who have been put under immense pressure as a result of COVID, actually, that's accelerated the change to a degree that we haven't seen. Our estimate of what happened in 2021 is that digital was around probably 60%, maybe even more, that in 22 it'll get up to about 65% or get towards 65%, and then will be 70% by 2024 easily. So the digital really continues to dominate and grow. It only just a year or so ago crossed 50%, so it is proceeding at a very rapid rate. And if you look at 2022, the forecast for the industry might be to be up by about 10%, but digital will be up 20, and traditional maybe in single digits. So digital will continue to lead the expansion, and the traditional TV companies, not just the TV companies, the traditional media companies, newspapers, magazines, outdoor, radio, etc., will have to move even faster. So I think the velocity of their transformation has to accelerate, just like it does in any industry that has underestimated the power of technological change.
So if you were advising the president of one of the major US TV networks and you were telling
Get on with it. Very simple, John. Just get on with it.
Okay, I think that's answered my question. I was going to say, what's the one thing you'd be telling him or her that they have to crack in 2022? What's the one thing that?
Well, the agility. The key thing is agility. I mean, that's the corporate attribute that's one thing. Secondly, that they have to control. They have to, just like our clients, they have to take back control in a 24/7, always on digital world. And then with much more granularity, that the importance of first-party data. We've seen that recently with NBC building their own version of a walled garden, but using first-party data, which is the core source of data, and third-party data now, the importance of that is evaporating pretty fast. And using the first-party data plus the signals from the platforms that we talked about before is going to become even more important. So putting the data together, making sure it's fully integrated, that the data lakes or rivers or whatever analogy you want to use flow into one another seamlessly is absolutely critical. Bringing it all together in one discrete operation. Unfortunately, most of these companies are grown by acquisition, or they've had different CIOs or CTOs or CMOs that have introduced different systems, and they don't speak to one another. So getting clarity around first-party data and using it in an effective and seamless way is absolutely critical, and putting it together with the signals. That's where we're seeing big growth. I mean, in the next 24 hours, we'll announce another not huge, but important data and analytics move that we've made, which capitalizes on the latest changes that we've seen in America and indeed around the world as a result of the increasing importance of first-party data and the signals.